And here is Rodney and Robin on Within the Chaos, their special guest, Billy Willard. Welcome to Within the Chaos with your host,
Rodney Shortridge,
and co-host,
Robin Dalton.
Thank you, Tara and Holly, and to the Vibe Radio Network. You can listen in by calling 516-387-1922 or connect to our web link at tobtr.com/8424299. Also, you can check us out at blog.radio.com and within the Chaos Link page to the Vibe Radio Network at viberadionetwork.org/within the chaos. Now, from deep within the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge, and I'll be your host tonight, along with my giggly co-host, Robin Dalton.
Hi, y'all.
Tonight, our special guest is Billy Willard. Billy is the president of an environmental consulting firm and a Bigfoot researcher. I'd like to also give a shout out to St. Albans for having us up this past weekend. It was great to finally be able to go in there and check the place out and meet so many great people and loving these springtime temperatures, Robin. What do you think about that?
I'm freezing. I freeze if it drops below 75.
Yeah, it's a little chilly. It's supposed to be down at the highs for the 30s by Saturday, so yeah, I'm really looking forward for that.
Well, we'll stay warm.
Well, how was your week this week?
Well, not very eventful as always. I spent a few days trying to recover from our Saturday's event down at St. Albans. Had a blast and had a great photo shoot thanks to yours truly there, Mr. Rodney. Thank you very much. I love the pictures.
Oh, thank you. It's hard to take photos and do a photo shoot when you're limited on time, but I think we got through it, did pretty good.
Well, you always do great work. So I was quite pleased, and I can't wait till we can all get together and go down there and spend the whole day.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Well, I guess since I see Billy's on, I believe we'll go ahead and welcome our special guest, Billy Willard. Hello, Billy, and thank you for joining us tonight. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing just fine, Rodney. Can y'all hear me okay?
Sure can.
Yeah, I hear you just fine, bud.
Good.
Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, bud?
Yeah, professionally, I own a business, an environmental consulting firm, and what I do in business is we deal with underground oil tanks, particularly those that are leaking. So we do cleanup, remediation of soil, groundwater, and that kind of thing. Do a lot of work for the state of Virginia. So that's sort of what we do professionally. The Bigfoot thing I call more of a hobby because it's one of those things where when you own a business, you just have to do it in your spare time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, we started Sasquatch Watch of Virginia back in 2005. It was actually started by two of my sons. It originally began as a forum, similar to the Bigfoot forums. It started out as Sasquatch Watch Forum, and that was in 2005. And then soon after, within about a couple months, we decided to start up a group, and we created a website for Sasquatch Watch of Virginia. And, of course, we started taking, sightings, and we created a hotline and a website where people could go and report sightings on the website in the state of Virginia. And eventually it grew over time to where we've now got, several researchers all over the state, pretty much everywhere, north, south, east, west, That way we can respond rather quickly to an area. If we get a sighting report in a certain area, we can hope to be able to give it to someone that's close to it, and so that they can get to it. But I've always blamed my two sons for getting me back into this. I originally had an interest when I was 8 years old, and I think, like a lot of people, the legend of Boggy Creek kind of intrigues you. And that's what my mom had taken me to the drive-in theater to see Legend of Boggy Creek, and that's where my interest started. And, of course, when I was going through school down there in the south near where you're at, Rodney, we went to Rural Retreat, and there really wasn't many books in the library about Bigfoot. So reading material was pretty scarce in the school libraries, but, and of course, we didn't have the internet like we have today, where you can find information everywhere. So, yeah, it was one of those things where I had an interest, but I was limited as to what information I could find. But yeah, I've had an interest since then. But my two sons got me back into it in my older years, so I put all blame on them.
Well, have you had any personal experience? I mean, actually seeing a Bigfoot for yourself?
The only thing I have seen, Rodney, I can't really come out and say that I've seen Bigfoot. I can say that I've seen glimpses of something in the woods that I couldn't identify. Probably the first strange encounter I had was in a town up not too far out of Richmond, Virginia, called Varina, V-A-R-I-N-A, Virginia, which is actually pretty close to the Richmond International Airport, believe it or not. But a lot of the land out there is a lot of farmland and a lot of swampland, wooded areas. And we went out there on an investigation. They had come into a group called NESRA, which is the Northeast Sasquatch Researchers Association, back at that time. And we went out there to do some research, and that's actually where my two youngest boys had a sighting of a creature, and that creature was around 7 to 7.5 feet tall, silver and gray in color, and the creature seemed to be more curious of them. Basically stood there for 5 minutes and just stared at them, never moved, up until the point that my son Josh had sort of made a movement into its direction, and that's when it took off. I was in a particular part of the forest when all this occurred and was actually in communication with him on our phones. And when he told me it took off, it was about the point in time that I saw something in my right peripheral vision moving at a high rate of speed. Now, I couldn't tell what it was. It went by so fast, by the time I got focused on it, it was gone. And that's really the nearest thing I can call a sighting. I've never had a nice close-up encounter like some of the eyewitnesses I've talked to.
Wow. What can you explain what is it like to be a Bigfoot researcher? And what does it take, I guess, to actually become a Bigfoot researcher?
Well, to be honest, it don't take a lot. It takes more effort and enthusiasm than anything. When I first started, when I got back into it, when my sons got me back into it in 2005, the first thing I did was started researching to see if I could find any, people that had been doing this for a while to kind of link up with and, kind of get a mentor, so to speak. And the first gentleman I ran into was Mr. Bill Drangenis. He was right here in the same town that I'm in. And I went and visited him. He was nice enough to invite me to his home, and we talked to him for several hours. And he showed us all of his equipment, and that just made me even more enthusiastic about it. And then when he told me about his sighting that him and another friend of his had while they were out metal detecting, and he had a really nice sighting and encounter story that intrigued me even more. So I kind of look at Bill Drangenis as a mentor. He kind of helped to, I guess, shape me, really into the research in Bigfoot.
Wow.
Cool.
In your opinion, what is the best area or terrain to look for Bigfoot?
I tell you, in my opinion, I believe that the southwestern portion of Virginia, which is down in your area, I personally think that is one of the best prime areas around. I've talked to several folks down that way. I've got a lot of relatives that live down there. And the majority of the people that you talk to down there are very closed-mouthed about Bigfoot. And I actually asked one gentleman one time when I was down there, we were researching an area. Y'all know where, where the Big Walker's at, right up there above.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were doing some research near that area, and I talked to a gentleman there, and he asked me what we were doing. I told him what we were doing, and he looked at me, and he didn't look at me like I was nuts or anything. He just looked at me. He says, "You know what?" He goes, if I had seen anything like that, or if I knew something like that existed, he says, I really wouldn't tell anybody. He says, because the last thing we want is a bunch of crazy people up here with shotguns going in here and stirring these things up, because he assumes that everybody's looking to kill one.
Right.
And I explained to him, I said, well, that's not what we're doing. We're just here trying to learn. We're trying to learn more about it. But I got the impression that he had several sightings. That was just the impression I got from him, because he was like, you shouldn't really mess with them. He says, because if you leave them alone, they leave you alone. And that's the way things should be. And that kind of gave me the impression, well, I think this guy's seen something or knows something. So
yeah,
I think there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of where you go, you go do your research or go Bigfoot hunting, how do you get permission to go on the lands and private lands to look for Bigfoot? I mean, do landowners work with you, or do they give you a rough time?
No. Typically what I like to do is I like to find private property, because you have a little bit more control over private property versus going out on, on a national park or, something that's state-owned where everybody's out there walking around.
Right.
So typically what we'll do is we'll get in a sighting from someone in particular that may have seen something on their own property, and then we'll end up becoming friends. And I do. I have a couple great friends that I've made here within about an hour and a half of where I live now, up in Spotsylvania County, and they have 100 acres of open field and woodland, and they also have access to an additional 4,000 acres that surrounds their property, and it's all private land. And I think the benefit of that is you don't have multitudes of people walking around in an area. So if there is a sighting or something is found, you're less likely to have any possible evidence to be tampered with. So that's the reason we prefer getting on the private property.
Well, I know that where I live here in Tazewell, I live in a valley, and I have, for the past 2 years during the summertime, around anywhere from 2 to 4 o'clock in the morning, because, normally you got your windows up and everything around here. That's just how the country people are, and
that.
And I could be watching TV, or I could be in here in my office working on something, and I can hear, and I know I've heard the recordings on TV and stuff, I can hear a yell or a scream or a yelp just like that. And I'll go outside on my back porch to see if I can, get a recording of it. But by the time I get out there with my recorder, the coyotes are already raising hell. And the dogs, you can hear the dogs for miles away barking.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, could that possibly be one in this area that, you can hear it, but no one's seen it yet?
Oh yeah, I believe that they stay. I think they're very elusive. If they want to be seen, they will, and if they don't, they won't. I think that we take for granted the intelligence that these things may have. I believe that they are a higher primate. I believe that they are an undiscovered North American primate. But yet I think that their intelligence is higher than, the typical primates we're aware of, the gorilla, the chimpanzee, that kind of thing. These things obviously have a higher intelligence than these primates that we're aware of. So, but no, I believe that you, down in your area, I think that there's probably the population is a lot higher in that area than they would ever be around where I'm at. So.
Well, have there been any evidence found from down here in Southwest Virginia or Southern West Virginia?
Yeah, we had one gentleman who right there on top of White Top Mountain, which is right there outside of Chilhowie. He found some hair samples up on the power line cut. He actually had a sighting in that power line cut when he was out hunting, and he saw the creature by this utility pole that was in the power line cut, and he actually went up there and found hair samples, about 8 feet up on this pole, and he collected them. Now, we had sent the hair samples out to, some veterinarians and some other folks to look at the hair, and they all swore up and down that it had to be black bear. But no DNA analysis was done on it. But it was really strange. It had some pretty. Some of the hair was pretty reddish. Now I know that black bear can, have some color differences on their hair, but the majority of the hair that he had collected was a real, almost a deep reddish color. Very long strands. But again, like I say, we sent it out, and a couple different veterinarians looked at it, and they said, microscopically, they said it looks just like bear. So we never really went any further with it. So, well, maybe that's the case. Because DNA analysis is very expensive. If you can't find someone that's doing a DNA project where they'll kind of do it at no cost, you're talking about a lot of money to do those analyses.
I'd say so. And speaking of what Rodney was going back to, so what does a Bigfoot sound like?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. There's been a lot of people that have described them as making a really high-pitched screaming sound. I've heard others describe it as starting out like a low moan and then actually works up to a high scream. Of course, you've heard the Finding Bigfoot guys, the calls that Bobo and them do, they describe it like that as well. And then I've heard other people describe like chatter type sounds, almost like like chimp chatter type sounds, to where it almost sounds like there's a language or something in it. And I'm sure you guys have heard of, I don't know if you've heard of Ron Moorhead. He was the guy that recorded the Sierra sounds out on the west. If you listen to some of his recordings literally sound like communication, like really strange vocalizations, but they almost have a pattern of communication to them, which Scott Nelson is a naval linguist, and he's analyzed those recordings, and he describes them as definitely being a language. So, that's pretty impressive.
So you think maybe what Rodney hears at night is them screaming out to each other?
Well, it's possible. Now, Rodney, I'm sure you being in the country where you're at, you know what a red fox sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they'll actually, I've actually had people send me vocalizations that was a red fox, because a lot of people don't realize a red fox can sound just like a woman screaming in the woods. But yeah, anytime you get, are you hearing like the sounds that? Because you know the difference between coyote and I've seen people mistake that too, but there is a distinction between coyote and whatever some of these other sounds are that people are hearing. I mean, there is a distinctive difference.
Well, what I hear, it sounds like it's way off in a distance. I mean, it could be a good mile or two away, and when it bellows out, it sounds like like you said, it slowly goes up. You can hear and then all of a sudden, it just keeps getting louder and louder. And then that's when you hear the coyotes and the dogs and everything in the holler just all of a sudden just start barking and raising the mortal hell.
Yeah, and that's what impresses me. I mean, when you hear a vocalization like that, and then you have all the other wildlife just throwing a fit right after it happens, those are the ones that impress me. Because these animals know something's out there that is unusual to them. So
I didn't mean to laugh, Rodney, but it sounded like a caveman mating hall.
Either that or it's that sound that Rodney makes when he wakes up in the morning and stretches.
That's what I'm doing. I'm just waking myself up. Well, you said you believe that these Bigfoots could be primates.
Yes.
In your opinion, where do you think they come from? And I know in some researchers, it's their opinion that Bigfoots are possibly like a missing link to humans. What do you think about that, or your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are I kind of steer in the direction and agree a lot with Dr. Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State University. His belief is that these things are some type of a knockoff from Gigantopithecus blacki, which was discovered over in Asia. And his belief is that many years ago, these things could have traveled across the land bearing there between Asia and Alaska prior to being covered up by the ocean. I really do believe that he's really on to something with that theory. Now, we all know that Gigantopithecus blacki, nobody's ever seen one because they went extinct many thousands of years ago. But one thing's for sure, what the skeletal remains that have been found, which are very limited in some caves in Asia, really just the mere size of these creatures that the scientists were able to develop from models based on the remains that they found, really shows that, some of these creatures, we hear about these things being, 7, 8, 9 feet tall. Well, Gigantopithecus was a big 8, and it was believed that Gigantopithecus did walk upright. And so, in my opinion, I think that his theory is probably one of the best theories out there.
So when you go out and you're trying to do your hunting and your research, what type of equipment do you take to use?
Well, over the years, we have accumulated different things. When we first started out, we had very simple equipment, things from just, regular cameras. And, when I first bought my first night vision, that was back before we had some, a lot of money. So we would buy these little cheap, Walmart used to carry the night owls. They were like first generation night vision. And, you look through these things and it's like a green look, I'm sure you've seen them. But then, as time went on, we started getting some big boy toys, and we ended up accumulating like audio recording devices that we could actually leave out for extended periods of time, trying to pick up any kind of audios, vocalizations. We were picking up parabolic dishes where you could, record sounds from long distances. We even tried sound blasting equipment where you would blast sounds of alleged, Bigfoot vocalizations to see if you'd get a response. So we tried a little bit of everything. We've got thermal imaging. We them things ain't cheap. Thermal imaging, and by far, so far the best success I've had with any of the equipment has been the thermal imagers, because you can pick something up and it gives you a heat signature. Something's there. 9 times out of 10, you can tell by the shape of the heat signature, what you're dealing with. So, if you hear something off at a distance and you put that thermal imager on it and you look at it and say, oh, well, that's a deer. You can tell by the way it looks on the image.
Right.
That thermal imager actually helped us on one expedition we were on. It was really funny. We had an expedition where there were several of us in different spots that we had picked out to sit overnight, and one of the guys had seen something. Now, he didn't have a thermal imager, but he was able to. He was sitting in the dark, and he was able to make out what he thought looked like a large black panther. And I'm sitting here like, what's this guy talking about? And sure enough, this thing, and he gets me on the radio and says, it's coming your way. So I've got this thermal imager, and I'm looking, and sure enough, I see an image, and you could actually tell from the image that it was a large cat. You could see the tail, and it wasn't a bobcat tail. This tail went down, it was on the ground. And I was like, wow.
Dang.
So didn't take long for me to radio to other people to come on over here. This cat's on the prowl.
Yeah, Kitty might have been hungry.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't want to take that chance.
So do you think that Bigfoot, do you think they build nests? Do you think they have nests somewhere? Do you think maybe they live in caves or build their own shelters?
I think
have you found anything like that?
We have found some strange stuff. A lot of people you hear talk about stick structures and stuff like that. A lot of the stick structures that I've found could be explained by weather, but we have run into a couple of strange ones that we really couldn't explain. Bent over trees and broken trees and stuff like that's pretty easy to explain. But when you start finding these structures that seem as if they are weaved or sewn into each other, that's a little bit different. I do know that. Now, I didn't see this myself. I had a witness call me about a structure that he found, which he thought was a nest up in Chilhowie. And the way he explained it to me was it was like he said it was like a lot of sticks and tree limbs that were really tall. He said he could actually walk into it. It had an opening, but it was thick all the way around where it had weaved branches and stuff inside the sticks. And he said when he actually went in it, he was hunting. He actually went in it, and he said it had a really strange smell. And then when he came out, of course, and y'all may have heard this story because it's a local story down your way. When he came out, and he was leaving because he just wasn't feeling right. He says, I really shouldn't be here. He, in his opinion, he thought maybe it was a homeless person or something that was living in a shelter or something. Yeah. So he decided it would be in his best interest, to kind of get out of there. And as he was walking away, something was hitting him in the back. And he would turn around and try to figure out what it was, and he didn't see anything. And then something would hit him in the back again. So he was looking up thinking that maybe there was some acorns, but, he had already walked down into a field, so there wasn't no trees above him. But the third time it happened, he actually saw what it was. It was a rock, and it landed right beside of him. So he turned around, and he decided, to go back and see what was going on. And when he walked back into the woods past the shelter, he went down towards this little creek, and he found a pile of rocks next to a tree, and they were actually still dripping wet, like they had just been pulled out of the creek. So at that point, he decided that he was getting out of there because he didn't know what was going on. So as he turns to go out, he runs face to face with what he described as this tall, 8-foot gorilla. And he said he was so close to it, he could feel it breathing.
Wow.
And he said he froze, and he said he had a 30-06 in his hand. He said he didn't even think to use it because the mere size told him that would be like a BB gun. I mean, that's he said, so he didn't even think about it. He said he immediately turned and ran as fast as he could run. He could hear the thing behind him the whole time, so he's running trying to get out of there because he's back in there about I think he told me 3/4 of a mile, he figured. So he's running. He can hear it behind him. And then down where his truck was parked, it was kind of like an embankment. So he literally jumped and slid down the embankment to get to his truck. And as he turned to kind of look to see where the position of this thing was, he said that the thing had like a limb in its hand and swung it at him, and it went right above his head. And he said he got in the truck and he went for the dashboard and was, I don't know why, but he thought that a 45 would do better. I ain't figured that one out yet, but he pulled a 45 out of his dash, and he looked up there and saw that it never left the tree line. It was still up on the embankment, never came down. And then he said he's never went back there to this day.
Hey, Rod, you want to go to Howie?
Heck yeah.
I wish I knew where it was at. I never found out where the exact location was. My understanding was this was really hilarious because the guy apparently had just moved from California to Chilhowie, and a buddy of his was supposed to go hunting with him that morning, and his buddy ended up getting sick, so he told him how to get to the hunting spot. So it was the first time the poor guy had ever even been in the woods, and I just think it's funny, his very first experience he has.
But he was actually hunting, not like Bigfoot hunting, actually going out on a hunt.
Yeah, he was actually hunting, right, deer hunting, right.
Wow.
Poor guy.
Well, I understand why nobody shoots them because I had experience years ago, back when in my 20s, I was deer hunting over in Cold Creek, and was walking a path and walked around a corner, and there's like this big, hairy, man-looking creature standing there in a smaller one, and I mean, we were probably 30 feet from each other, and it's like all stopped, stared, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And you never think to shoot because you can see it in their eyes. They look so human. And so I started backing up, and then they started backing up, and they kind of went off down the hill. And I just stood there like, I cannot believe what I just saw. Ain't nobody ever going to believe it. Oh, my God. But, yeah, I believe that they're around here. I really do. I agree with you. But I know I've read some that researchers, they have a theory that most people that see Bigfoot, especially when UFOs are spotted in an area, do you think Bigfoot's maybe tied into UFO phenomenon, or are they possibly aliens?
Well, I don't think so, but I will say that I'm good friends with Stan Gordon up in Pennsylvania, and I know for many, many years he's been collecting reports where people have seen Bigfoot sightings at, in the same areas that they've been having UFO sightings, and sometimes together. So, I mean, he's been collecting reports like that for many, many years. So, it's another one of them things where it makes you wonder, could there be something to it? But, we just don't know. But, anything's possible.
Well, and when you was talking about the size of them, this has been a question that my son wanted me to ask you. He's like, how does a 7-foot to a 12-foot, 400-pound to a 1,500-pound hairy man-like creature able to hide and be so elusive as a Bigfoot?
Well, I personally believe that the only time they come into an area that's inhabited, by us as humans, I think, is when they have to take that opportunist risk for whatever reason to get something, whether it's something to eat or whatever, or get to one area to another, and they get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because other than that, I think they stay pretty deep in. And let me tell you, you all got some deep in places down there.
Yep.
You all have plenty of deep in spaces. You could have a population of 1,000 of them down there, and probably you wouldn't ever see one. I mean, people don't realize how vast that wilderness is down there. I had a guy on the West Coast tell me that Virginia has no wilderness. And I asked him, I said, well, when's the last time you looked at a Google Earth map of Virginia? I said, you just point it right down there at the southwestern portion of Virginia, and you tell me there's no wilderness.
No kidding.
But no, I really do think that they are opportunists, and I think that, kind of like us, we'll get this urge for a chocolate pie. So maybe every now and then they get the urge for, something that they might find in the trash can behind somebody's house or whatever. So I think they do take opportunities, and I think that's when most sightings occur because, like around. I've always said this, that we've always noticed for whatever reason that sightings seem to be more prevalent in the spring and in the fall. And I've always wondered about that. And I theorize that it's because after a long winter, people are ready to get out. And that's when most people are out hiking. When the warm weather comes and it's springtime, everybody's like, hey, let's go out hiking. And that's when you have sightings because people are in the woods.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for fall. Well, we better go out and do some hiking before it gets cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people go look at the fall leaves and things like that. And so I think it correlates with when people are mostly out in the woods.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I know, doing what we do with Black Diamond and all that, we have some big supporters, and then we have others that look at us like we're stone cold crazy. Does your family and friends support your Bigfoot research? I mean, I know you said your sons do, and do you find it difficult to speak to the public about your research sometimes?
No, it doesn't really bother me. I'm actually surprised at how many people are interested in the subject. My wife don't have nothing to do with it. And she don't think that I'm crazy or anything. She goes, it's not that I don't believe it exists. She says, I just don't care.
Well,
I don't care if it's out there or not.
I get that on my end too. I don't care.
But no, to be quite honest, I get surprised sometimes at how many people are actually interested in it and actually want to talk about it. I guess it was about 3 years ago, I had to go do a bid on a project up at Fort Belvoir up here at the Army base in Northern Virginia. And I had my truck with a toolbox, and I had forgotten I had a footprint cast that I had left in my toolbox. I forgot to take it out. And, of course, before you can go in and do the bid, they search your vehicle. So the military guys come out to do their search, and the guy pops open my toolbox. And he pulls, this is an MP, military police guys pulling this footprint out of my toolbox, and I'm like, oh boy, I wonder how this is going to go. So next thing I know, he's like, guys, come here. So he's calling all the rest of them that are in the building. He's waving them over. And before I know it, there's like 6 military police guys looking at this cast, and they look at me and says, where did you get this? I kind of laughed at him. I said, curiously enough, not actually too far from here. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, what do you think this is? I said, well, what do you think it is? He goes, well, I don't know. So somebody's got a big foot. I said, well, you just named it. and they were all interested. I mean, they were asking questions and asking me where, and I mean, so it's kind of funny. Some people that you think are going to look at you like you're nuts, they actually act like little school kids when they, when they learn about it. So.
Well, I mean, I can understand that, and that kind of goes into my next question. Where do you see the research going in the future, and others like you? And do you foresee someone actually finding, like a body or skeleton remains of a Bigfoot in the near future?
Well, I'm hoping someone finds some type of remains. I think that's the only thing that's going to be the final proof for science. Folks have, taken film, video, pictures, that unfortunately it's just not going to do it. And I don't think DNA evidence, unfortunately, is going to do it, just simply because you have to have, when you talk to the scientists, they always say you've got to have a specimen. You've got to have something to compare it to. And until you have that specimen, you can find something that's unidentified and there's no way to classify it. So until they have that type specimen that they need, the DNA and all that's just not going to bring about the proof that's going to be accepted by science. So hopefully someone will find something. I hope no one has to kill one. I obviously don't agree to killing anything really. But I think that research is going more in the technological side. Now that we have all these drones, we got the drone technology. People are putting thermal imagers on drones. There's a project going right now down in the Midwest where this guy has gotten funding for this big blimp project with thermal imagers, and he can actually, if he locates something, he's actually got a field crew that he can send to the exact location. I think that kind of research is probably where this is going.
Wow. Well, I know you said that you have not come face to face with one, but what are you going to do when you are confronted with a Bigfoot? I know you said you really hate to think of killing it, but are you willing to maybe trap it or drug it to try to show the scientific community proof?
I've thought about that many times. We're sitting out there doing nighttime surveillance. What would I actually do if something just walked up to me? And I think it's good. It's good to think about that. What will you do? I always try. We always try to look on the positive side and say that we're immediately going. We'll take some pictures. We're going to do all this stuff, but I don't think any of us really know how we're going to react if you see something this towering come up to you. I really don't know. I really don't know what I would do. But I would like to say I would get some photos. I don't even know how we'd even begin to trap it. I mean, we're talking about something that's probably got extreme strength. So I don't even know what you would be able to do to trap it. And then when you think about the tranquilizers, for example, if you were going to try to trank something like that, how in the world do we even know how to mix this tranquilizer? We don't know enough about their weight or whatever, so we might tranquilize it and just make it mad and rip our arms off.
Yeah, that's true.
Or we might trank it too much and kill it anyway.
Yeah.
But I always look at it more on the area that we probably wouldn't do enough and just make it mad.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So what are your plans for 2016? You have any big projects you're working on for this year?
Well, of course, the big thing we're working on is we're putting together the first Virginia Bigfoot Conference. We're working on that, and of course, as you all know, it's going to take place down at Hungry Mother State Park there in Marion, Virginia, on August 26th and the 27th. We're kind of excited about it because it's the first time we've ever had a big conference for Bigfoot in the state. I'm going to have some pretty good. Folks there to speak. We got one local guy there. I don't know if you guys know Russell Easterbrooks. He's a local down there in Southern Virginia. We're going to have Joe Gasandi. He just recently wrote a book called Munster Track, where he actually went out on expeditions with different individuals and groups all over the United States, and actually wrote his experiences down in a book. It's a pretty good book. So he's going to be there. We're also going to have Bill Dranginis, which is, of course, the guy that kind of mentored me. He's going to be there, and he's always great because he keeps everybody up to date on the new technology that's out there for research. We got Dr. David Floyd coming up from South Carolina, and he's just got some amazing research that he's done on, like, the history. You know, he's told me some historical stuff that I wasn't even aware of in Virginia, particularly around, like, Dismal Swamp. There's some stories out there that I'd never even heard. And so he's going to be talking about that. And then a lot of people know Larry Batson. They call him Larry the Animal Guy Batson. He's a wildlife educator up in Indiana. He's going to make a trip down. Of course, he's going to bring some of his animals with him. Typically, he likes to bring the reptiles, usually, because that's what all the kids and everybody like. So he's going to be coming. He's got some really interesting information, too, about Bigfoot. And he actually, just so that y'all know, he actually did a part for the, let me pull this up because this was very interesting. This is almost unheard of. He did a Bigfoot lecture for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they actually put it on DVD. And that's completely unheard of for a government agency to let somebody come and lecture them about Bigfoot. But that was pretty significant. And they, like I say, they put it on DVD, and so he's got a lot of knowledge about research and stuff he's done. And him, of course, being a wildlife educator, dealing with all types of different wildlife, I figure he probably is a pretty good knowledge piece to talk about behavior.
Will you ask him to keep his frogs at home?
I'll guarantee you I think now he's got to check on the laws because each state's kind of different, and that's what he does. Is since he's an educator, he has to check with all the state laws as to what he's allowed to bring. And he said he's pretty certain that the state of Virginia doesn't allow pythons. So he may not be able to bring the pythons.
I'm good with the snakes. I just don't want to. I'm terrified of frogs. Ghosts don't scare me.
I don't think, you know what, I don't think he's ever, I don't recall him ever bringing a frog, but he does occasionally bring this big tortoise. And I mean, I don't even know how he picks the thing up.
Oh, yay. I can't wait to see that if he has it.
You know, that, he loves to bring his, he's got these huge spiders that are like tarantulas, but they're bigger. You know, so he's got all kinds of different things. A lot of times he'll bring one like his alligators. You know, he's you never know. He's like a surprise every time he comes.
Cool. Well, I got another question for you real quick. I know there's a lot of Native American legends about Bigfoot. Could that translate or have any kind of crossover to the giants that a lot of researchers have been talking about here lately? Could they be one and the same or from the same, genetic pool?
Well, I know a lot of people have that belief, and we do know that there's been a lot of giant skeletal remains found in states, right next to average-sized skeletal remains, which is very interesting. You can almost get on the internet and find, there's a lot of those been found in Ohio, Kentucky, I think some in West Virginia. It's very interesting because some of these skeletal remains have been found with like copper jewelry and stuff. Really strange.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a lot of Native American, and as you know, different Native Americans have different beliefs too. Because some of them believe that it's a spirit type creature that, is like the guard of nature, like a forest guard. Some Native Americans believe that it's a spirit that's warning people of impending danger. It's kind of like a warning call. But then there's other Native Americans that believe that they're, real flesh and blood. Like over on the West Coast, you've probably heard the stories of Native Americans. There's stories that go around there about where, people would protect their children because the Bigfoot would come and steal the children. Now, I've talked to a few, and a lot think that was kind of like one of the wives' tales, that the Native Americans would tell their children to make them stay close, not, kind of like one of them stories, if you don't do this, a Sasquatch will come and get you, Yeah. But it's interesting, though, because, you find all those rock artwork, in the caves and stuff where the Native Americans drew, and it depicts what looks like an ape. If an ape never existed here, how did they know to draw it?
Right.
That's what's always intrigued me. I think that's some of the best evidence out there. But it's definitely interesting.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. Okay. Next question, I think, would be a good one. If somebody was wanting to investigate, start out on their own, trying to investigate their area for Bigfoots, what would you suggest for them to do to get started out?
I would suggest that they start out simple. I know many of people who have started out big and literally went bankrupt. Believe it or not, a lot of people get very enthusiastic and they think they have to have every piece of equipment known to man, and before you know it, they're putting second mortgages on their house, and truly, it's crazy. Yeah, so I always recommend to people, start out simple, and if you're not familiar with the woods or the area that you're at, always do research, get maps together. Doesn't hurt to have a GPS, compass or whatever you're familiar with. And I always recommend take a buddy. Don't, especially if you're going into a new area, don't go out there by yourself, because a lot of people getting lost. They got writing books about people getting lost. So, always take a buddy with you. But honestly, just a simple camera. Simple things like if you're finding evidence, if you say for example, you're out and you find this what you think appears to be a footprint, and say for example you wanted to send this to Dr. Meldrum or someone that looks at footprints, just make sure you're carrying something in your backpack, to show scale, that you can lay beside the print as you take pictures. And then take pictures of all the angles, because as we know, the lighting is different depending on the angle that you take of it. So it's never a bad thing to have plenty of pictures if you find some kind of evidence. And one key point of advice I'd like to say: if you find a hair sample, something that you think looks promising, one of the biggest mistakes that are made a lot of times is folks will put hair samples in Ziplocs. That's actually bad. The Ziploc can create a moisture which can ruin any DNA evidence that might be in the hair. So we always recommend that you put that in a paper bag so that you don't ruin any possible DNA.
Yeah, I about that.
Yeah. But yeah, just, cameras, just, rulers or whatever for scale, just a simple thing. Start out small and simple, and I think you can, grow to be a great researcher.
Well, cool. Well, see, that's kind of how we started out, when we were doing the paranormal. We started out with two real recorders, a DVR, and two digital cameras.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, we were very, very small.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the best way to start, and then as time goes on, you accumulate things here and there, save up, and as long as you're not breaking the bank, you're good.
Yeah, that's what we've had to do.
Yeah.
It's took us years to build up, but but it's worth it. And that's something that we've talked about. We wanted to maybe because I own some land across from where I live, and and where I keep hearing that yelping or yelling during the summertime, I was talking to people in the group about maybe let's just camp out one weekend and see if we can at least get the audio from it.
Yep, that would be great. That would be great.
Oh, and also I was going to ask you real quick, do you know Clayton Trout?
Yes, I do. I have actually spoke to him a couple times. I've been on the radio show that he does. So yeah, and matter of fact, Clayton Trout knows the gentleman I'm talking about in Chilhowie. Yeah.
See, now Clayton, I met Clayton. He's one of our honorary members of Black Diamond, and I met him a few years ago, and he helped us out with some investigations, and he talked about everybody in the Bigfoot area in case we wanted to try to do that, incorporate that with our paranormal group.
Right.
And Lord have mercy, him and the Mothman and Bigfoot. Oh, I could sit and listen to that man talk for hours.
Oh, I know. He's got that radio voice too.
Yeah, he does. I don't have a radio voice. I just got a hick voice.
That's me too. I'm up here living in Northern Virginia with this country hillbilly accent. So yeah, everybody lets me know every day, where are you from? Because you ain't from around here.
Yeah, I used to get that a lot. Oh, and real quick, matter of fact, I had a friend of mine. He works for the newspaper. Somebody had sent him a photo of a trail cam supposedly with a Bigfoot, and I kept looking at it and studying. I mean, I was up all night looking at it. It just didn't look right.
Right.
So I contacted my friend, and I told him, I said, "Can you get this guy to take me exactly to where this spot is?"
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. He's like, he's a preacher. He ain't faking nothing. I said, well, it just don't look right.
Right.
And later that evening, he contacted me back, and he told me, he said, Rod, he said he faked that. I said, why? I'm like, why would a preacher fake a picture like that?
Right.
He said, well, he's just trying to get some attention down in his area.
Yeah, it's a shame. That's probably one of the things that bothers me the most. People, they look at it as a joke and something funny, but for the people that are out there that's seriously trying to find answers, it's just a big letdown, and that's probably the thing that's the most hurtful.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Billy, I appreciate you coming on the show. We're about out of time, and man, you're more than welcome to come back on here anytime, and love to talk with you. I could spend hours talking to you too.
Well, I appreciate it, Rodney. And just real quick, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell everybody if they want to find out how to get tickets to that conference, they can go to VirginiaBigfootConference.com. It's VA Conference or VA BigfootConference.com, and they can find all the info they want.
Awesome.
Okay.
And we will be there. We will see you in August.
That's great. I look forward to meeting you, both of you.
You
okay,
too.
well, I appreciate it.
So much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, that's it for us tonight. I want to thank Billy Willard for coming on the show, and to thank everyone that took the time to listen and take part in our show. I'd like to give a big shout-out to Vibe Radio Network, also to all the first responders and our men and women in the armed services. Thank you for your service. Our guest for next Thursday night, April 14th, will be Dr. Gump, as she talks about her book, Illusions in the Hannibal Lecter Novels. So turn in next week to another exciting show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, be safe and good night.
Good night, y'all.